After Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments earlier this week during an interview with Sebastian Gorka about using the Second Amendment, maybe, against Democrats, and I'll read her statement in just a moment. But anyway, after all this came out, Democratic Representative Haley Stevens called for the Capitol Police to, at the very least, check on Marjorie Taylor Greene, but what Stevens really wants is a full-blown investigation to determine if this woman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, is in fact a threat to other members of Congress or really to anyone in this country. So I'm going to read Stevens' tweet right here where she calls for this, and then I'm going to read you Marjorie Taylor Greene's statement. I am concerned about the mental health of my colleague from Georgia and would like Capitol Police to address her dangerous threats in my workplace. Just as we would any school or job site, we cannot let calls for gun violence go unchecked. She's 100% right. If a student in a school anywhere in this country were to suggest something like this, make these kind of comments on social media, the school would immediately go into a lockdown and that student would be apprehended. I know that because members of my family have lived through that. The threat turned out to be, non-material threat, but the student was taken into custody to have to answer questions about it. And the schools did go into lockdown. If this were to happen in a workplace, the authorities would be called and the individual would in fact be terminated. If you said maybe it's time to use the Second Amendment against my coworkers, you're not coming to work tomorrow. You're not coming back to that job ever. And that is pretty much, and I say pretty much, because let me read you Marjorie Taylor Greene's actual statement here. Democrats, they hate our Second Amendment. Ultimately, the truth is, it's our Second Amendment rights, our right to bear arms, that protects Americans and gives us the ability to defend ourselves from a tyrannical government. And I hate to use this language, but Democrats, they're doing exactly what our founders talked about when they gave us the precious rights that we have. So she then said, of course, she's not a violent person. She doesn't want a civil war. She just wants a national divorce. So she avoided actually saying, use the Second Amendment against Democrats. So we have to make that distinction. She did not say, use the Second Amendment against Democrats. But as I pointed out on Ring of Fire earlier this week, when you connect the dots of what she said, that really is the only interpretation of what she said, at least in my opinion. There's really no other way to read that. Like, hey, don't forget, the founders gave us the Second Amendment to fight against a tyrannical government, and Democrats seem pretty tyrannical. She's baiting them. She's baiting her base. But she's not actually saying the words because she understands if you were to say the words, the way that some of the headlines, of course, have made it seem like she said, but she didn't because she chose them very carefully. But had she said the actual words, then yeah, there'd be no question about this. So I think along the lines with Haley Stevens, what the Capitol Police need to do is they need to have a conversation with Marjorie Taylor Greene. They need to sit down and possibly perform a mental health check or submit her to the proper, place for a mental health check. Because this is not normal behavior. I personally think Marjorie Taylor Greene should be expelled for what she said. Because again, as in my opinion, there's only one way to interpret that. Hey, you can fight against tyranny with guns and the Democrats look fairly tyrannical. It's a wink and a nod to her ultra-violent base. To the people who are already posting on social media and have been for a year that they've got the guns and they're ready to go. They've said that. I've done stories on that. There have been massive articles about it. This is not hyperbole. There really are legitimately Republicans, hardcore Republicans, waiting for the go-ahead signal. This, to me, I read this as the signal. So yes, the police should investigate. But more importantly, the House of Representatives needs to call an emergency hearing and force her to come in front of them, televise the whole damn thing, and explain exactly what you meant, Marjorie. Explain it for the entire world to see. That's what needs to happen. And then, of course, the police need to investigate. If they find any kind of credibility to her threat, throw her in jail. Get her out of office, and let's move on. But personally, I side with Haley Stevens here. I do believe Marjorie Taylor Greene is dangerous. I don't believe her when she says she's not a violent person. And I do believe that she is a threat to not just her Democratic colleagues in the House, but to Democrats all over the country.